Alright, guys, Merry Christmas Eve to all of you who celebrate. I got all my family here, but like every year, we all have our own little Christmas Eve afternoon traditions that we do, like alone. I asked my sister if she wanted to come watch this and do a video here, but she's like, "Oh, I want to do American Psycho." I said, "I'm not doing American Psycho on Christmas Eve. Like, maybe later tonight." So maybe we'll have a surprise video up later tonight, me and my sister doing a video together, finally. But, so we might get a pop in every now and then. Maybe my sister will hop on for a second. But, didn't expect this movie for Christmas Eve, huh? I figured go against the grain, like, not do a Christmas movie. But this is another one of those films that is a masterpiece for me. And it took a little bit of watches over the years for it to get there. I'm not a big Clive Barker fan. Like, I've said it a few times on the channel, I'm not a Hellraiser guy at all. Like, I like the first two movies, but they're not even movies I throw on often. So, it's just never been my series. I don't think I've ever seen past the third movie, and that's in that whole franchise. So, that doesn't do anything for me. Nightbreed I've seen maybe twice. It's alright. It doesn't really do anything for me either. But this story here from Clive Barker, like, this is my favorite of anything relating to him. Like, just this movie is an absolute masterpiece. And it's one of those rare movies that would only be like maybe an 8.5, 9 out of 10 for me. But the score from Philip Glass here just brings it to a 10 out of 10. Like, the score in this movie is, I think, one of the most beautiful scores in a horror movie ever. Like, a few months ago, me and Al did a countdown of, like, our top 10 scores in a horror movie. I forget where I put this, but it was, like, in the top 5. Like, the score in this movie is so beautiful. It's so haunting. It's so gothic. It elevates what would just be a damn good fucking movie to a masterpiece for me. So let's talk about Candyman and watch Candyman from 1992 for Christmas Eve afternoon. And God, I love Tony Todd and Virginia Madsen too so much. Like, she kills it in this movie. Virginia Madsen does such a great job in this movie as Helen. And Tony Todd, what can you say about him? I mean, he's a complete horror icon, like, for so many reasons. But God, he kills it too in this movie. And I mean the whole score, like right from when the movie starts with the aerial shots of the highways and stuff. That too. But, like, I mean, it's always been you, Helen, like the piano theme, and we hear like a music box like earlier in the film. That's like the most gorgeous piece composed for a horror movie, like top 3. Like, it's such an amazing fucking composition. Like, and it fits this movie so well. Because this movie, for me, is like a twisted love story. Like, a very twisted love story. And there's a few theories that you can go down different roads. Like, what actually happens during this movie. And I think that's another amazing thing about this. And it's a very underrated horror movie. Like, yeah, it's a classic, and everybody pretty much who's seen this movie will admit that it's a classic, even if it's not for them. But you don't hear this movie brought up nearly as much as it should. Like, and this is like the third time this year I've watched this, because I just did I was on Gareth's channel on Video Tasties a few months ago. We did a watch party of this. But I said I still got to do a video on this and just watch it by myself and get all my thoughts out there, because God, I love this movie, and it's not talked about nearly as much as it should be, which is a crime. And no, I'm not doing the 2 sequels, like, anytime soon. So this is just for this movie. I don't even think I've seen the sequels more than once or twice, maybe. So I don't give a shit about those 2. It's all about this first movie. And can we all agree, just Tony Todd's voice is just alone, just his voice is so effective in this movie. Like, he has such a distinguished voice Like, you know it's Tony Todd if you hear him doing a narration on anything. You know it's Tony Todd. Like, he just has such a distinct voice that you know it's him immediately, and it works for this so well. And then we get the little glimpse of Helen, and then just the music, man, that kicks in. Like, it's so good. And we get the whole little story being told. We get Ted Raimi here also, which is great seeing him in anything. And he ends up, which this doesn't make sense completely. Like, we don't know the rules really with Candyman. Yeah, you gotta say his name 5 times in a mirror. So, he says it 4 times, and then she says it the last time. And then she gets killed, his hair goes white, and he's never the same again. He went like crazy. But is it like, does one person have to say it 5 times? Or can it just be whoever says it that last time is the one who gets killed? Like, you would think that he had to say it the 5th time. And once she said it, like, the 5th time, but she said it the first time for her, that should start a new line of her having to say it 4 more times after that to do it herself. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what the rules are, but that it seems like that's how it would logically go to a completely illogical, like, concept. But that's how I always thought it should go. So this kind of never made sense to me at the beginning here. This movie also is kind of in its own little group of its own, if that makes sense, by being pretty much all a female cast. Like, besides Tony Todd, obviously, and like a few supporting characters. Like, we have Virginia Madsen here as Helen, we have our friend Bernadette, and then except, like, for the husband, Trevor, like, it's all Ruthie Jean, like, it's all mostly women, and like, mostly Helen and Bernadette, which is not too common for, like, an early 90s horror movie to be, like, centric on, like, pretty much female characters. Like, I could see probably an influence from Silence of the Lambs with Jodie Foster's performance. Maybe that was an inspiration. Like, this was, what, a year later? So, like, we all know how big that movie was. So, I'm sure that can be an inspiration for it, and wanting it to, you know, kind of go down that same route of having, like, a female lead in a horror film, which I can hardly call Silence of the Lambs a horror movie. It's more a thriller for me. But you get what I'm saying. Like, it definitely seems possible that they were inspired by that. And I love the whole thing that Helen ain't stupid. She's a very intelligent woman. Like, she shows up in the classroom for her husband Trevor, and he's, you know, talking flirty with the girl. I think her name is Stacy, I want to say. But, and then she asks him about her. And he's like, oh, which is a crush or something like that that she has on me, or some stupid, like, excuse like that. You know that she ain't buying that shit. And when she comes, like, breaks out of the hospital later in the movie, and she finds her there with Trevor, you know, with the student, she's hurt, like, visibly, yeah, but she's not surprised. She's not shocked. Like, she knew right from here, if not before this, because we don't know what, you know, we can only tell from what we see here from the beginning of the movie onwards. But who knows how long this has been going on and how long she's known about it. But I love how they portray her like that. They're like, she's not shocked at all at his bullshit, and she just pretty much can call him out on it. Another reason this movie works so well for me, and I've said it a few times on this channel, is that I love movies about urban legends and myths and stuff like that, which is a big reason why I love the found footage movie Chess that I've been promoting for the director and the cast and everything like that ever since I saw it early a few months ago, because it deals with those type of subjects. I love movies that delve into urban legends and just where they came from and how they formed, and like anything to do with that in the movie, like you're already grasping my interest, like, immediately. You're getting my full attention. So, like, I love that about this movie too. I love also about this film how it's like, I don't really pay much attention to social commentary in movies. Like, I'm aware. Like, I know what they're trying to say. But, like, I really don't give a shit about that in most movies. Like, if it's a particular movie that, like, it kind of rests on what it's trying to say, like, it's different. But for the most part, like, when I watch a Romero film, Like, yeah, I'm aware what's going on with Dawn of the Dead, with consumerism and everything like that. I'm watching it to see great effects and seeing zombies run amok in a mall. Like, that's what I'm watching movies for, is for entertainment. So I really don't give a shit what's going on, like, socially, like, whatever messages that they're trying to say. But they do a great job in this with Cabrini Green, and it's like, this is like an urban horror film. And you didn't see too much of that either back then in the early 90s. And just how the way that they portray and show, like, how these people in the projects and stuff, the cops don't even show up for crimes, like, to investigate or anything. Like, they're there to fend for themselves, and like, they have it the worst out of anybody, and they're just poverty stricken. And Ruthie Jean, so she's just trying to raise her baby. Like, that's all she's trying to do. Like, not, and she makes a good point when she says that, like, you know, the white people that come around here, they're not too handshakey with us, and like, they think we're all gangbangers and junkies, drug addicts and alcoholics, and they all, you know, all criminals. And they do a great job of that whole commentary throughout this movie. Again, one of those rare movies that I'm aware it's there, and they handle it very, very well. But it's not something I'm like really thinking of when I'm watching this movie. Like, I'm just looking at every other amazing thing that happens in every scene. Just the whole dynamic too between Bernadette and Helen, and their whole friendship, and just whatever they say to each other, it doesn't matter. I never get bored of just hearing them bullshit back and forth with each other. And then, like, how they delve more and more into this mystery of Candyman, and how she starts explaining that her building was originally supposed to be a housing project before they changed their minds. So it was built the exact same way as Cabrini Green. And then they figure out the window, not the window, but like how the medicine cabinets are back to back. There's no wall separating them, and that's how somebody could have gotten in, and trying to, you know, like a logical explanation for what happens. Like, that's attributed to this myth of Candyman, and trying to make rational sense of it, that it could just be a crazy killer, which we see a little later, like some guy pretending to be Candyman. He's just some criminal, and just so masterfully done. Like, I love how they handle all of that. Love the scene when they're saying Candyman into the mirror, then Bernadette chickens out and doesn't say it the fifth time, but Helen does. But then that calls into question, when we hear this story, and you can, I guess, argue it that way, that it's a story. So, like, they don't know exactly what happened. But why does it take so long for Candyman to come visit Helen versus, like, every other instance in this movie where Candyman shows up and just immediately kills the person who called him? Why is it just because of the connection that he has with her, and that, like I said, like that twisted romance, kind of, and that him just wanting her to be his victim, like, so bad that, like, he can wait, but like everybody else who calls him, he's just like pissed off that he was probably watching a TV show or something, and he gets sucked out of his chair, and he has to show up in a random bathroom, and he's just pissed and like, fuck these people, and just kills them. I don't know how the rules work again, so like, I don't know what to make of that. Like, I guess, and plus you can argue it's just for the plot's sake, but always wondered that. How come he takes his, like, sweet-ass time getting to Helen for the first time, but yet the stories we've heard and what we see later, like, he shows up. So, I don't know. And again, just Glass's gothic string choir score here. Like, for all, like, the exterior shots and, like, when they're driving and throughout this movie, so good. Like, it has such a unique mood and atmosphere to it, this movie, that, like, I don't feel with many other movies. Like, it has such a uniqueness to how it feels. And I don't know, like, this is, like, one of the only movies that feels this way for me, like, when I watch it. And it takes some balls, man, for the two of them to just walk up into the projects like this. Like, you see, like, all the guys catcalling to them and then asking if they're 5-0 and stuff. Like, not just anybody can do that. Like, that takes some balls. Like, to just walk into the projects like this and just, even though they do look like cops, you know, like, they really do. And Bernadette was saying it on the drive over. Like, yeah, it's dressed up like cops. And she's like, no, I said, like, dress casual. But, like, kind of professional. And she's like, no, we look like cops, like 100%. And they really do. So it takes a lot for them to do this. And the whole scene with Bernadette and Helen, like going through the apartment, and it's so tense. Like there is so much tension in that scene, especially when she climbs through the medicine cabinet into the other apartment on the other side, and just the pictures that she's taking. Like it's shot so well. Like it's such a great scene, and it just gives you this grimy feel to it, and at the same time, it just piques your interest the first time you see this. Like seeing like the mural basically to Candyman, and like just seeing like how much this myth, quote unquote, has affected this community here. Like it's so good. And that's such a great shot with the mural of him with his mouth open, and she's taking a picture from the other side of the wall, so you just see her in the mouth of the Candyman mural. That's such a great shot. I love that so much. But like every movie that does this, gotta call it out. When Helen just pops her head through the medicine cabinet and screams, "Bernadette!" and scares the living shit out of her. Screw you, Helen. Like, come on. Was I calling Anne-Marie Ruthie Jean earlier? If so, yeah, I meant Anne-Marie. Like, Ruthie Jean's the one that got killed. But, like, yeah, everything that she says here, like, with her baby and stuff, and how she's not, like, not every one of them is like the people downstairs. Like, she just wants to raise her baby good. And just all of that is handled so well in this. And how she, like, slowly, like, how she starts off very hesitant, and then she just slowly opens up, and she's like, "I'm sorry," you know, like, and, like, actually becomes, like, friendly with them. Just the way that they handle that, and, like, her opening up to them finally, and, like, being able to talk to them without being, like, afraid, like, is the usual reaction for these people whenever white people come over. Like, is to just sweep the place, and just cops, and that's it. Like, so just seeing that, like, in the way that they handle it, so well done in this. This professor, when Trevor, Bernadette, Helen, and him are all at dinner, and how he just boasts about knowing about Candyman. "Oh, you should have read my paper I published 10 years ago." And he starts laughing like he's such a douchebag, this guy. But then we just get the great telling of the origin of Candyman from this dickhead professor, and saying how he was the son of a slave, and that it was like near or after the Civil War, and that he was a talented artist, and that he was commissioned by somebody to make a painting of his daughter, and they ended up falling in love. And then when the father found out, he paid some people to saw off his right hand with a rusty blade, and then took like all the honey from the honeycombs from the beehives and wiped it all over him, and he just got stung to death by bees. While it's all focused on Helen, like it's just a lingering shot on her, and her eyes are kind of lit up, like the lighting on her eyes. That whole scene is so good. Like, it's so excellently shot. Like, it's such a, with the score in the background, that gothic score again, like, oh, what a great scene that is. And this little kid is adorable in this movie. And this is exactly what I mean about, like, the score by Philip Glass elevating this movie to a masterpiece, where without this score, it would be a little bit lower for me. Like a point and a half, like I said. Just, the score is so essential to this movie. Like, and there's a lot of scenes with the score in it. Like when her and the little kid are walking through Cabrini Green, and they look at the, you know, all the pyre and stuff that they built that they're going to light on fire that we see at the end of the movie. And just the score there is just, it's so effective. It's so well composed, like all of it. And then the way it just builds up to when we finally hear the piano theme, Helen's theme, for the first time. Like, oh, the score, I cannot praise the score in this movie enough. Like, I really can't. When the boy's telling Helen about this story about the kid who got his dick cut off in the bathroom, I love his line. It's just like, "Can't fix that, better off dead." Like, this kid's, he's such a gem in this movie. And then we see Helen go in the bathroom, and she gets attacked by Candyman. And then, "I hear you're looking for Candyman, bitch." The whole lineup scene is great too. Like, just awesome. And then when they finally show the guy who did it, and he repeats the line, and she immediately knows, like, number I forget, I think number 5. And like she just immediately knows. And this guy is now going down as Candyman. And this kind of debunks her whole thesis here, that it was kind of logically explained that Candyman is just some criminal gangbanger who was killing people. And how it just still builds, like after the scene with Trevor and Helen like having dinner, and then we get that awesome aerial slowly turning shot of looks like a sunken in stage or something, like there's seats all around, and just Helen's theme starts playing, but it's not the piano yet, it's just still with strings, and just it's like such a beautiful melody, man. Like, oh, I'm not gonna stop praising the score. Like, this is gonna be half this video is gonna be talking about the score to this movie. That first shot in the parking garage of Tony Todd as Candyman, just with his fucking jacket, and his arms are behind his back, and he's just standing there, and then she starts getting like the visions. So iconic, so good. And Madsen just destroys in this scene here, like the first scene with Candyman. The way that she looks at him, like entranced, like terrified but in awe at the same time of what she's seeing. She and her eyes just like turn red, like she's about to cry. Like, she absolutely destroys this role completely. But this scene, unbelievable how her acting is in this scene. Now this is where the theories start for me. Right after that parking garage scene, when she's all entranced, and like in a trance basically, she wakes up in Anne-Marie's apartment, and she cut the head off the dog, and the baby's missing, and the police come and they fucking arrest her. Like, for the crime that she did here, and now they're looking at her as this crazy psychopathic killer. Now, I've always looked at this movie two ways. Either the whole Candyman stuff is real, which I still don't get why he, like, after seeing her for the first time, she wakes up here, like, with the head off the dog, like, cut off the dog's head. Did she do that? Is she being controlled by Candyman? Or the other way you can go with this is she's just been so obsessed with this whole myth of Candyman, and then she just went through a traumatic experience, getting, one hell of a black eye, and getting attacked by this fake Candyman, that she snaps and she starts killing people. Because you can take the whole "it's always been you, Helen" two different ways too. You can take it as, like him longing for her, like, because it reminds him of the woman he fell in love with that caused him his death, basically. You can look at it like that, like he's longing for her, like it's always been you, like you've always been the one for me, like. Or you can look at it as it's always been you, Helen, like it's always been you. You've been the killer. You've been killing these people, like, from these events forward. Or maybe even beforehand, like with Ruthie Jean. We don't know. But you can look at it that way. And it's very interesting to go down that route and think about it, like, and ponder on those thoughts. Then the other nice piano score we get when she's calling Trevor, like, as her one phone call. And it's like 2 in the morning or something like that, and he don't answer because he's with his student. And she knows this, but then finally he comes and picks her up the next morning. But I love, like, when the voicemail is going off, like when she's calling him and he doesn't answer because he ain't there. I love how they zoom in on that shot of, like, their wedding. Like, or it looked like their wedding, if not just like a happy photo of the two of them. But I'm pretty sure it was their wedding. But I love that. Like, the way that that's shot too is so, I don't know, it just, like, this is why this feels like a twisted love story to me, this movie, and it always has. And I don't know, it's just handled so well. And if you think I was getting through this video without once saying how fucking sexy Virginia Madsen is in this movie, you were crazy to think that that wasn't coming up at least once. And see, that's a cool jump scare when his hook comes through the medicine cabinet and just scares the shit out of her. And then she runs outside and sees Candyman there. Like, that's a cool jump scare. Like, not like a big, huge one with loud ass music. Like, it's just very effective. And then she goes to like make the phone call, and he's right there behind her. Like, this whole scene is so good. And then that whole scene, just Tony Todd, Virginia Madsen, destroying, just for that whole scene of him talking to her, and then putting the hook behind her head and like causing her to bleed, and she's falling on the floor, and she has the knife in her hand, and then Bernadette shows up and she gets killed. And that's another thing with this movie. You know how much I love slasher films and my gore and practical effects. Like, this movie does not need kills, and you don't see any of it for Bernadette. You see the aftermath a little bit. Same with like Trevor at the end. Like, there's some great effects, like when they show the after effects and the bodies and stuff, but most of the kills are off screen, if not all of them, and it's just as effective. Like, it doesn't need to have on screen kills in this movie, and I think that's another reason this movie is so underrated. Like, when it came out, and even still today. Like, even though, like I said, it is regarded as a classic by so many people, but you don't hear about it compared to like other films like Halloween and The Thing and Psycho and The Exorcist and like The Shining, down the list, like The Omen, and that's another one you don't hear as much. But just so masterfully done, everything in this movie. And I think when it came out, people were expecting like a slasher movie. Pretty sure like that's what happened. People were expecting this to just be another run-of-the-mill, like, leftover from the 80s, like it's now the early 90s, the slasher craze died out, and this is just like an after effect of it, like another random slasher, and people didn't really go see it. And I think that's what happened, because this is such an underrated movie. I mean, especially when it came out. Like, this movie didn't get really that much love. Like, it's from the majority of like moviegoers. And the lighting too is amazing in this. Like, there's not a lot of like color in this movie. Like, it's like I said, it's very like dark and gritty and grimy feeling, especially with the whole, you know, the abandoned apartment and stuff where like Candyman's lair supposedly is, with all the artwork and stuff. Like, and it's set in this urban area and this urban projects. Like, it's a very devoid of much color film. But when we get like flashes of lightning, or like the scene like when Helen is being driven to jail after Bernadette was killed, we get some cool colored lighting and stuff, and just all of the lighting is handled so well in this movie too. And we can keep going down that second theory that she killed Bernadette. Like, it was just the two of them there. Like, you know, assuming that this whole Candyman thing is in her head, that she just snapped, and now she's just full-on delusional that a Candyman exists, but it's her committing these crimes. It still works. Then it works in the next scene where we see the doctor talking to her, and then he gets hooked from behind and he gets killed. It's just the two of them in there. Then we see Helen at the end, like when she's climbing into the fire and stuff to save the baby. She's carrying a hook in her hand the whole time. So, like, I love that about this movie so much, that you can look at it those two ways. That this is actually really happening to her, especially when they lock her up here, and then you see him, which is such a great shot, when he's coming down, floating from the ceiling right above her, when she's strapped to the table in the hospital. What a great shot that is. And then she's screaming, he's under the bed. Like, another brilliant scene. And just, again, like when they show the video later, he ain't there. She just looks like a crazy maniac. So I just love that aspect of this, that you can look at it in both those ways, and it makes sense, like, either way. It kind of adds more credence to the fact that she's crazy, because she's been in the hospital here for a month. When she goes to talk to Dr. Burke, he says that for the last month, we've been stabilizing you, like, on heavy doses of, I forgot what it was, like Thorazine or some shit. But, like, so she's been there for a month. Since she's been there, nobody else has gotten hurt. Nobody else has gotten killed. Nothing. So like, again, you can look at that like, and then as soon as she like comes to here, and she's in the room alone with the doctor, he gets murdered, and she escapes. So I don't know. Like, I'd love to hear people's theories on which way they view this movie. But what a great scene that is when he gets just the hook comes through his chest, and then Candyman just flies out the window with him. Like, it looks so good. But again, in that scene, right before he comes, she calls him and says his name in the mirror. She looks to the left, and conveniently there's a mirror there. And she calls him, and then he's just right there and murders the doctor. So, like, why did it take so long? Like, again, for him to go visit Helen in the parking garage for the very first time, which seemed like days after she conjured him for the first time when Bernadette chickened out. I never got that. Then just more amazing score as she runs home. And when she gets there and she sees this fucking bitch, student of Trevor's, her husband, is here painting the place, and she was just gonna be left to rot in a mental institution, which it's a dick move, no doubt. I'm not saying it's not. But from his point of view, his wife's a fucking killer. She's out of her mind. Like, he's seen no evidence of this Candyman shit or anything. And especially if that's how you view this, that she is the killer. So you can't blame him 100%, but it's still a dick move. Like, if you get what I'm saying. Like, it is for sure, but look at it from his perspective. Like, his wife's a fucking insane murderer. You can't fault him 100%. Now, again, after she leaves and goes back to Cabrini Green, into Candyman's lair, if you will, again, she's carrying the hook in her hand. It's not the same hook, because you can tell, like, this is the hook, and goes down, there's like a bar going this way that she's holding it. But she's carrying a hook around. Why? Like, unless she's the hooked killer, like, unless she's Candyman. Why is she holding the hook? Does she even know? Again, is she being controlled by Candyman? Or is it all him committing these murders, and this is all for real? I'd love to hear people's answers, again, because I've always looked at it in 3 different ways, this movie. And the last 15-20 minutes of this movie, perfection. Just absolutely masterfully done in every single way. The score, the sound design, the acting from both of them, the way that this story just peaks. Like, this is a slow burn movie too, and just the way that it peaks with all of that just being so excellently done and handled so well for the ending of this movie. Just what an amazing last 15-20 minutes of a movie. Like, oh, it's so good. And again, just the acting between the two of them. We had a deal about letting the baby go, and Tony Todd with the just surrender now, and oh, so good. And the fact that they use practical effects to capture the whole bees in his mouth, like, he actually had bees in his mouth, Tony Todd. Like, what a fucking devotion to a role, man. Like, this is why he's an icon. Like, with Night of the Living Dead, the remake that Savini directed in 1990, and this, and the Hatchet series, and just, you go on and on with Tony Todd. He's just an absolute icon, and what a masterful actor. And just to go there, to go so deep into this role, that he actually let them put a whole bunch of bees, actual bees, in his mouth to get that shot that we get in this movie of the bees coming out of his mouth and stuff. And like, for Virginia Madison too. It sounds like I'm saying Madison, but I'm saying Madison. Like, sometimes it comes out as Madison. But just the fact that she allowed herself to get so deep in this role too, that she was there for all the bee stuff too. like laying in his arms. Oh, it looks so good. Like, I'm so happy that they did practical effects for this, because it just makes it that much better. Like, so much better than if there was any CGI to this. And right here, when she wakes up and it says, "It was always you, Helen," and the piano kicks in, fucking beautiful. Like, so hauntingly beautiful. Oh, this is why the score elevates this film for me to just masterpiece. It is so delectable. Just listening to this score at the peak of this movie. Oh. And then when the choir comes in and you hear the baby crying and stuff. Oh, come on, man. This is so good. Like, this is one of the best endings to a horror movie. Like, for me. Like, so amazing in every single way. And note, she is still carrying the hook in her right hand. And that's why when she gets down into the whole pile of junk, Jake, all he sees is the hook. And that's why he says Candyman's there, and they all form that mob and burn the thing down. So again, is Candyman really in there with them? Or is she just knew that she hid the baby there, or finally remembered, and she's still like posing around as Candyman with a hook in her hand? Like, but the score, man. But then just that shot, like right before they throw the first Molotov and light the thing ablaze. That first shot when Candyman appears in there and just covers her mouth from behind and said, like, I knew you'd come. Fucking amazing. And how the music just completely stops. Just so you can hear her screams from inside the fire and the baby crying. And the sound design is so good in this. And the use of the score is just masterful. Like, if you haven't picked that up already, my opinions on the score. And our main lead doesn't survive here. Like, Helen burns to death, but she saves the baby. So, again, I know I keep bringing it up, but, like, was Candyman real? And he just burnt to death again. Well, like, they burnt him after he got stung by the bees and died. But he's burnt again, or this is Helen having a little redemption arc at the end. And, like, just doing the right thing, finally, after committing these crazy crimes and, like, losing her mind. I don't know. It's up to you guys, the viewers. And then just at the funeral scene, and just how there's hardly any people there. Just Trevor and the student, and like a few other people. And then all the Cabrini Green shows up. And again, he throws the hook onto the casket. What does that mean? Because then we see at the end, and when she kills Trevor, when he says her name, which I have an issue with that, but when we see that, Helen comes and kills him. It's always been you, Helen. The student's nipples are so hard that they're sticking right through her shirt. It's a white shirt. It's so distracting. Had to mention it. Talk about nipples getting hard. As soon as that piano theme, Helen's theme, kicks in again here, and Trevor in the bathroom, it starts remembering, like, his memories of her, just, and the way he's breaking down, just, oh, the score, man, I love it so much. All right, I guess I misremembered, because I was gonna say, I always remember him saying Helen only 4 times at the end here into the mirror. But I just counted. It is 5 times. So I don't know why I thought that. Then Helen shows up and just guts him, and the music's still playing. And the stupid, slutty student comes in and he's just split from, like, the bottom up in the bathtub. And just that shot. Then the music, that the credits come on, and the score with the choir. One of the most effective endings to a horror movie. And God, what a masterpiece of a movie this is. And like I said, this is one that took me a little bit to really fully get there with this movie, to put it as a masterpiece for me. Like, it took a few watches over the years, but God, this movie is just so masterfully done in every single way. And like I said at the beginning, one of those rare movies that if it wasn't for the score, it wouldn't be at that level. But thankfully, like, thanks Santa on Christmas Eve, we have Philip Glass's score here, because it is just one of the most beautiful scores in a movie, not even just a horror movie for me, like in a film. Like, brilliant, like speechless, just one of the most impactful endings to a movie. So well done. So that's Candyman 1992, and everybody, I hope everyone has an amazing holiday, Christmas Eve. Christmas Day, I'll have a video up late tonight. I go out. I'm going out with my family in a few hours, going to dinner, meeting my aunt and uncle. So I hope everyone has a happy and healthy Christmas Eve, and I will see you guys later tonight. Take care.